Today I'll have to answer one of the most common questions that a lot of guys ask me about. What is the right chess training program? How do you get from one level to the next level? And I'm gonna present you a complete blueprint from the very beginning all the way up to the level of 2000, which is pretty advanced. What do you need to study at every level to get to the next one? What are the common errors, common roadblocks that stops people from progressing sometimes for years on the same level while they could have easily improved if they just knew what to do? If you're new to the channel, who am I to talk about this subject? I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov, founder of the Remote Chess Academy, and over the last 15 years, we have helped tens of thousands of students to achieve their chess goals, and therefore I have more than enough data to understand what I'm talking about. Let's start from the very beginning, a novice chess player. At this point, your rating is 0 because you haven't played any chess games so far. Now, by the way, I understand that most of you are more advanced, therefore, if you don't want to know this information, feel free to skip around. The time codes will be below the video, so feel free to skip around. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. So, a beginner chess player, the main goal of this level is to truly understand chess rules, because at this point, chess games often look like this. Here we can see a sort of perpetual check, and the white player realizes that his attack leads nowhere, so he decided to push a pawn. And now black player realized that, hey, he can actually grab the queen. And of course, that satisfaction emotion is contagious. And somehow for beginner players, they're often more happy about grabbing their opponent's queen compared to even checkmating and winning the game. I don't know why, but somehow they feel so. One of the common incorrect approaches is trying to comprehend all chess rules at once, and that is just very overwhelming and difficult for a newbie chess player. Like, think about this analogy. What if someone asked you to learn the Chinese Mandarin alphabet in one go, like to learn all of it? Like, by looking at this, I think that just learning A would take me ages, you know? So really you need to simplify matters. It's actually much more effective to start from the end game, and I learned this tip from Capablanca. So here is student is playing white, his or her task is to checkmate me, I'm playing black. Here white can checkmate with, a bunch of moves, and the task for a student is just to comprehend rules, comprehend how it works, and then we gradually increase the complexity of the situation. So next time I may ask a student to checkmate me in this position, where it's a little bit more complex. White needs to figure out that they gotta bring their king closer and after that finish the game in a similar style. Anyway, while doing this, first of all, they'll really get it, like how the king moves, how the queen moves, and what is a checkmate. Plus, on top of that, they get this instant gratification, because after the game I can tell them that I'm a grandmaster and I played the best moves possible for black, but you still managed to checkmate me. Of course, I was at a disadvantage from the beginning, but nevertheless, you did a great job. After that, we can do the same with a rook or with two rooks, and gradually a student can learn all the rules and what is a checkmate. Now, here's the common error: playing the cow opening in Chicago Bulls t-shirt because it feels cool. And what I mean by that is a lack of direction, simply. People do all kinds of things instead of doing this, what is required to truly understand chess rules, because without this foundation, you certainly cannot move any further. The next level is when you're below 900, and what you do need to practice here is one movers, meaning one move attack, one move defense, and one move consequence. Like, here's what I mean. Let me put up this position. All right. Now, let's say you're playing white as white to play. So how should you play here if you're white? You may think about this for a few seconds and then we'll discuss this together. By the way, you can also use this same position from the black perspective. If it's from the black perspective and it's black to play, then black needs to notice that this rook is hanging and they can capture it in one move. Now, if you're looking at this position from the white perspective and it is white to play, then of course it's the opposite. You gotta notice that the rook is hanging and you need to do something to move this rook away. Also, you can realize that you can actually castle, so we also reinforce knowing chess rules, because now you gotta know that even though the rook is attacked, you still could castle here and you should castle. It shows me that it's a draw for some reason, I don't know. But anyway, you gotta figure out the difference, that if the rook is attacked, you can castle, while if the king is attacked, it's not possible. For instance, I'll just artificially create that situation. So if our king is in check, then you cannot castle out of check, you gotta cover. But if the rook is attacked, without this bishop from b4, what we have seen previously, like if just the rook is attacked, you may castle and you should do that. Here is the next example. It is black to play. Once again, you may think about this for a few seconds, then we'll discuss it together. And this is a position for training, as I call it, a one-move consequence. You gotta realize the one-move consequence of the move you intend to play. In this position, the most played move by black is pawn takes g5, which is a major blunder. And the second most common is knight takes g4, which is also a major blunder. So knight takes g4 drops the queen right here. And pawn takes g5 is really like quite a massive blunder. First of all, it drops the rook, but after that it doesn't stop here, because then it's check to the king on the next move. White is going to actually capture the queen, so black really blundered a whole lot here. The common mistake at this level, claiming that you play like Tal because you sacrifice pieces left and right. Bottom line, we gotta stop that. We gotta start playing decent chess without dropping pieces at every game that you play. And besides these one movers, you also need to learn basic openings. It's not that the openings are so important at that level, but it just helps us to avoid nonsense, because otherwise, for some reason, beginner players, they really love racing these flank pawns forward. And so to avoid all these like completely weird openings, it's good to know some fundamental openings so that you at least end up with, decent positions and you can play from then on. Moving on to the next level from 900 to 1200, and many of you guys are on this level. By the way, 1200 is a medium chess rating, so at this point you can be modestly proud of your chess accomplishments. And there are several things that you need to do on this level to bypass it and go beyond that. The first thing is two movers. In this position, it is white to move, and hopefully you can find the winning continuation here. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. On the previous level, we solved mate in 1 puzzles. Now we're moving on to mate in 2. So here we got to figure out that you can move forward with check. The king has to move. There's only 1 square, and then queen g7 gets the job done. This time it is black to play. How would you play here? This time it's training of capturing in 2 moves. Sometimes your opponents may just hand a piece in 1 move, but sometimes you need to do something. Like right here, you cannot instantly grab this bishop because it's guarded by the knight. But what you can do is to first trade off the knight, and after that this bishop is no longer defended and you can just capture it. The second item besides 2 movers is basic tactics, and I'm not talking about knowing all the tactical motifs, because there are tons of them, but just the most fundamental ones. A pin, a fork, a discover check, a double check, a bankrupt checkmate, stuff like that, and it is possible to study them relatively quickly. In this position it is white to play, and while I was talking, hopefully you noticed that there is a winning move for white, and the move is knight f6, which is both a double check as well as a discover check, which makes it a checkmate. The next item is fundamentals of the positional play, and the term positional play usually scares people because it sounds very intricate, but in reality this is simply what are the good positions for your pieces, and it's fairly easy to understand that. In chess you want to control the greatest quantity of squares on the board, and therefore you need to put your pieces to the positions where they control the maximum number of squares. Now, so the first rule is to control the center, because pieces in the center are the most powerful. They control the entire board from there. Therefore, we want to develop our pieces towards the center. So after that, for bishops, they are linear pieces, therefore they need open diagonals. The diagonals free of pawns. We want to put them to positions where they do control those open diagonals. And for the rook, for example, it's the same story. It's a linear piece, so it wants to have an open file, free from pawns. Here it controls the greatest quantity of squares. Also, you want to control more space, you want to be more active, put pressure on your opponent, therefore you want to move forward. So for the bishop, you want to put it somewhere here or here. And as you realize that thing, that is the positional play. Nothing super complex, of course, it requires a little bit of learning and practice, but fundamentally that is it. And the final item on the list is knowing a few openings. A few openings for white, a few openings for black. At this point, your opponents already know some theory, and you need to be on par. Also, as you learn these tactics and fundamental strategies, it becomes easier for you to understand why the openings are such. For example, right now, we talked about the exchanged variation of the French defense. And you could say that this is an opening theory, but you can see that if you understand the basics of the positional play, then all these moves are common sense. So you don't have to memorize them, you actually understand why the moves are so. Also, if you're part of the Igor Nation, then you know that there are tons of opening tutorials on this channel and also some fancy tricks, so you have probably this thing done already. If not, you can easily get it done. Common mistake at this level is playing blitz at 2 AM to prove all your losses thus far were coincidental misfortune. Now, the idea being here that you can't just keep playing over and over again, or even solving tactical puzzles over and over again and do nothing else and expect to improve. Like, there should be a certain process of improvement. You need to learn something, you need to practice something, and ideally analyze your games once in a while, because otherwise you'll be blundering pieces in one move and you won't even be aware of that because your opponent didn't notice that thing. By the way, if you don't have much time to allocate for chess and just want to follow a proven training program, then I've got a special course called Level Up Your Chess. I'll drop a link below the video in the description, and you can simply follow that training program. That contains all the sections that you need, how to avoid blunders, how to play openings, middle game, end game, all the essential knowledge within one course. You can follow it just as many of our students did and bring your chess to the next level in the most effective way possible. Moving on to the next level from 1200 to 1500. Unfortunately, a lot of players get stuck there for life, but in reality there are very simple ways to bypass that level if you just know what to focus on. And the main thing is understanding chess principles. Let's think about this position. It is black to play, and I just created like some very standard opening position, and yeah, so you need to make a decision. So how would you play here if you're black? In reality, black would play here all kinds of moves, for the most part round moves. Now, what do you need to do? There is a principle called principle of the least active piece. You need to find the piece that is the least active and improve its position. And here black has a bunch of passive pieces on the last rank, and the thing that comes to mind is that a number of minor pieces are already developed. This one, the light square bishop, has not been developed yet, and it's time to move it. Now, this square is taken away by the white pawn. This square is also attacked twice by the white pieces. Therefore, you end up with either this square d7 or the g4 square. And moving your bishop to either of these two squares is a good move, and you should pick any one of them and play. So chess is a very simple game if you understand how to play. Say you go here, and for instance, white plays h3. What do you need to do next? Well, same thing, principle of the least active piece. Your minor pieces are already more or less active. Now it's time to think about these pieces, the queens and the rook. No, not the queens, the opposite, the rooks and the queen. So what do you got to do about them? Well, move them to a better square. For the rooks, you want to put them to an open file right here, or at least to a semi-open file, such as this one. And for the queen, you just want to move it out somewhere. So you got to pick from these moves. And thinking of these moves, rook c8 seems to be the most logical to me, because if you move this rook, I mean, it still remains to be pretty passive, even on e8. But rook c8 definitely makes it more active, putting the rook to an open file. So we follow the principle of least active piece, we put it to an open file, we do all the cool stuff that fancy boys and girls should do in life. That's awesome. Let's say white goes f4. I'm fantasizing, but this is very real. That's how you actually play chess. So where should the knight go? Think about this. Where will you move the knight? For most players, they're puzzled, they just pick some random move. Now, in reality, there is a principle called the principle of maximum activity. In chess, you want to keep your pieces active and you want to move them forward. Therefore, you look at forward available squares. Like this square would be nice, but that would drop a knight. But this square is nice, even though it's attacked by the bishop, but it's actually also guarded by the rook because we were so prudent and we put it to an open file in advance. So knight c4 is the move you want to play. Comparing other options, if for some reason knight c4 would not be possible, should you pick this move or this move? We also know the principle of the center. You want to keep pieces closer to the center, to the middle of the board, to these four squares, because they're the most active there. Therefore, comparing these two moves, knight c6 is closer to the center. It already influences some central squares, and that is knight, so knight c6 would be the second best move. The first best would be knight to c4, knight to c6 would be the second best, and knight g6 would be the least favorable option that you choose only if nothing else is available. So, as you can see, when you understand this stuff, it's really simple. And I'm a chess grandmaster. That's literally how I play chess, fundamentally. But of course, you really need to understand this. Now, if you want to go deeper on this subject, I've got a free masterclass. I'll drop a link below the video in the description. You can check it out and you'll understand much better what I'm talking about. This is really the very foundational point of chess improvement. The next supplementary thing that you need to study at this point is basic endgames, such as this one. How to win if you're playing white. It is white to play, and you may think about this also. Which move would you play here? Now, why do we study endgames at this point? Well, because prior to that, there aren't too many blunders, and people usually never get to these kind of positions, and even if they end up with an endgame position, usually one side has a huge material advantage at that point, so it makes less sense to study these kind of theoretical positions. But now it's something more practical, and if it's white to move, you want to play king e6. After that, we win the opposition. The black king must step aside and give us the way. After this, we can capture this space and ensure that our pawn will be promoted, and we win. And another supplementary thing is to understand pawn structures. And I'm saying that this is a supplementary thing because the main thing remains to be the same. You need to understand those fundamental principles. Anyway, regarding pawn structures, that gives you a better long-term understanding of what's going to happen in this game. And also you obviously can play with your pawns better. Like right here in this position, we can see that black has double pawns, which is a disadvantage. They're less mobile, less flexible. However, since they stand closer to the center of the board, that is actually not too bad. Like if this pawn were on a7, it would be rather useless, but from here, at least it does control a central square, therefore it's not too bad for black. On the other hand, we can see that white has a pawn majority on the king side. We've got 4 pawns versus 3 pawns of black, and we've got this e-pawn, which is a candidate passed pawn, because there is no black counterpart on the same file, which means that in the long run, we wish to move this pawn forward, and at some point, this pawn, which started from the very humble origin, can make it all the way to the top in life, proving that the American dream is still alive. Really cool. Common mistake at this level is complaining that your rating is low despite knowing a bunch of chess memes, that chess boxing exists, if Hans Niemann cheated, etc. And then concluding that probably you just lack that mysterious chess talent and that's why you're not progressing. And just to be clear, have nothing against having fun. Chess is a game, it's supposed to bring us joy. But if you want to improve, you gotta put some deliberate effort into that, and hopefully this video also will outline the path for you. And the next level is from 1500 all the way up to the 2000 rating. And if you can get to that 2000 rating level in chess, man, you're as cool as cucumber. Nowadays, you are a wannabe at a local chess club. You can always go to a local park and get $10 by beating those clueless hustlers. And if you happen to live long enough, you'll become a millionaire, but you have to live really long. Anyway, that's a pretty juicy goal to achieve. How do you do that? And the answer is comprehensive knowledge. It is black to move. How would you play in this position? And the thing is, there is no single and easy answer to that question. You gotta consider a number of factors. Now, the problem is, most people study chess inconsistently. They just watch random videos, play a lot of bleeds, solve some tactics, etc. And therefore, they have certain areas, certain subjects that they understand really well. And if they appear in those positions, they can play a brilliant game and defeat some high-rated opponent. But the other day, they got into a position that they're less familiar with, and they go down quickly. So we gotta rectify this and make sure that you have this well-rounded knowledge of chess. Like in this position, there are a number of things that black can consider doing. Black could play bishop h6 and trade off dark square bishops, because with this central pawn chain on black's colors, like your dark square bishop is bad and you wish to trade it off. So that's one thing. Another thing, you can follow that principle of the least active piece that we talked about previously and just develop your light square bishop, completing your development. You may also notice that in this position we have a closed situation in the middle of the board. We have pawn chains, and your pawn chain looks towards the king side, so you do wish to expand there, and you want to start the pawn storm there. Therefore, you need to move this knight away to d7 or e8, and then push this pawn forward and start your expansion there on the king side. That is another thing that you can consider. So all these moves are possible. And as you can see, there is no single simple idea that you can just follow and play the right move. You gotta have that more comprehensive understanding of the situation. Let's say you played bishop h6, putting pressure down here, your opponent realized that maybe you want to take and then grab the pawn on e4, so he plays f3 to defend it. What do you do next? Well, next you realize that the move pawn f3 actually exposed some new weaknesses along this diagonal, and getting there and checking him is a pretty nice thing to do. He moves away. What do you do then? Well, again, you notice that by moving this pawn forward, they actually weaken some other squares around it, and therefore you want to take advantage of that. So perhaps you want to play knight h5 and put the knight to this strong square on f4, where it's protected by your pawn, and it is on your opponent's half of the board, therefore it'd be pretty cool to go there. If he goes g3, what do you do then? Well, one way is just to expand with f5 as we planned, but also there is an idea that you want to consider attacking moves on your opponent's half of the board. And that's the first thing you should think of. How can I go to my opponent's half of the board and attack something there? And that's how you find the move bishop h3, which hits the rook. And as he tries to escape, you can follow up and get that juicy rook on e1, and after that keep your attack and hopefully win the game. And to formalize it in this bullet list of items, like first of all, you need to eliminate blunders. I mean, you can't eliminate them, but you can reduce their quantity, because it's hard to get consistent results when you blunder frequently. And next thing is just to eliminate those gaps in your knowledge about opening, middle game, and endgame. And you may wonder, like, Igor, this is genius. Opening, middle game, and endgame, that's all there is in chess. I mean, that's not what I mean. At this rating level, you already know quite a lot about chess. So a lot of subjects are already covered by you. And we just need to find those areas where you're weaker, noticeably weaker compared to your average strength, and put that all into one well-rounded package where you're all covered and you know how to play. For instance, when it comes to middle game, you need to also learn how to defend. Because so far people only learned how to attack, and they all are bad at defending. Let me show you an example of that. Let's say you're playing black, you're playing the knight variation of the Sicilian defense, pretty cool, you're much like Kasparov and Fischer, but white plays rook g1, the move you've never seen before, and you realize that he wants to play g4 and g5. Probably that's why he put his rook right there. And you realize that this is a hasty, unprepared attack instead of development. This should not be good. But if you don't know how to react, guess what? He's gonna play g4, g5 and end up with a great position and push your knight away and start attacking you. So you need to know that in order to counter a flank attack, the best reaction is to counter strike in the center. So start thinking about moves that you can play in the middle of the board to counter attack and hopefully to open the position. So the move that comes to mind is e5, expanding in the center after the knight goes back. Now I wish to play d5. And we can't play right away because he can just capture it, even though it would still make some sense for us to open up the position and try to just get to his king. We can play d5, even if it's a sacrifice, and then maybe bishop b4 and try to just make use of the fact that his king got stuck in the center. Even that would make sense, but it's even easier to just prepare that so that you don't have to sacrifice anything. And after g4, you can make that classical counter strike in the center of the board, pawn d5. Now you attack him, so he has to do something. And after the exchange on d5, guess what? All these g4, g5 thing become completely useless for white. They only weaken their position for no reason, and you're good. So you have to know that stuff so that you don't, compromise your position. If your opponent starts attacking, you don't start defending passively. You know how to deal with that. When it comes to endgames, it's nice to study rook endgames because they are one of the most frequent endgames you're going to face in your games. For example, in this position, if it's black to play, you got to be careful. White is ready to start delivering checks and move forward. So probably wish to deliver this check first to kick the king away. And after that, you either want to go further from the king so that you can start delivering, those perpetual checks, not letting your opponent to go forward. Or you can actually go back to the so-called Philidor position where you hold the 6th rank, and that is also a draw. So knowing these things are really nice because in a real practical chess, normally by the time you get to this position, you're already down on time. You have some seconds on the clock left. Therefore, you just need to know this stuff really well. A common mistake of more advanced players is writing in comments to this video, "Thank you so much, Igor. I was 2300 before this video and now I successfully hit the 2000 level." Today we talked about the overall curriculum of chess improvement, and if you want to know more specifically what should you do today if you have, let's say, half an hour for chess, what's the best use of that time to improve at chess, this video answers that question. And if you want me to help you to get better in chess, I'll drop a link down below to the course called Level Up Your Chess that contains several sections, several chapters on how to avoid blunders, openings, middle game, endgames, proper training, and my big promise is that even if you study just one of them, you will bring yourself to the next level. Either way, have fun and take care.